Hi, welcome to our Handwritten webinar. I'm Amber Walsh, Senior Account Manager here at Handwritten, and I am so excited for today's webinar. We have Brittany Hodak, best-selling author of Creating Superfans here, and Handwritten's very own CEO and Chief Roboteer, David Wax, ready to chat about gratitude in action. As they chat, if you have any questions or thoughts, pop them into the chat to me. And now it is my absolute pleasure to bring on David.
Thank you, Amber. So this is a real treat for me. I was actually on Brittany's podcast about a year ago, and I just think she is amazing. And this is the first of our new webinars, which are not solely focused on using the Handwritten service. We're trying to provide additional value and bring in some amazing speakers. And Brittany is certainly one of those. I think you're going to get a tremendous amount of value. And if my camera will allow, she has written this amazing book called Create Superfans, and we'll send out an email about it after. My background replacement is not showing, but I have it dog-eared, not just for this show. So with that, I'd like to bring in Brittany. So welcome, Brittany.
Hey, David. So great to see you.
Great to see you. So I will apologize in advance. You are the first time I've ever interviewed anybody. But I would love for you to kind of explain who you are and your why. Like, why are you doing this? What drove you to write Creating Superfans? And just explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a keynote speaker and an author, and my why is I wanted everybody to understand that the number one thing that you have to do to differentiate yourself from all of your competitors is to figure out how to turn your customers into superfans. Now, I grew up working in the entertainment industry. My very first job was at a radio station. I was actually the mascot. That was the first thing I did. I got to dress up in a bumblebee costume. And then I worked at music magazines and record companies and entertainment agencies. When I was 26, I launched my first entertainment agency, and my very first big client was Walmart. So all of a sudden, we were making these products that were available in 4,000 Walmart stores across the country, and also working with all of these big CPG brands. And I quickly realized that the same questions that I'd been trying to answer for a decade, which were, how do I help break this artist? How do I get more people to care, not just enough to listen to the song, but actually buy the album or actually buy the tickets to the shows? Like, all of these things that I'd been trying to figure out within the context of entertainment were the exact same questions that people were asking across the board. How do I get people to try my service for the first time? How do I get people to buy my product for the first time? How do I get people who tried it once to come back again? How do I get people who have been 5 or 6 times or are paying money pretty regularly to tell their friends? Like, how do we take people from awareness to affinity, and then from affinity to advocacy? They want to tell everybody they know. In other words, how do I turn my customers into superfans? So about 5 or 6 years ago, I decided that I had to spread this message with the world. I started doing keynote speaking. I started blogging everywhere I could, going on every podcast I could, contributing to major news outlets. And then last year wrote this book, Creating Superfans, that sort of brings it all together, all of my experience, all of the research, and a framework that I put together to help everybody understand how to make customer experience your differentiator and the thing that future-proofs your business against all of your other competitors. Because if you're not turning your customers into superfans, then they may still be seeing you as just another commodity provider, just another service provider, which means that they could desert you at any time to go somewhere else. So my book is all about helping you change your mindset from how do I close a sale to how do I create a superfan who's going to stay with me forever and help tell all of their friends too.
I love it. And you actually kind of touched upon one of my questions, which is this ladder of bringing somebody from customer to a client all the way to a super fan. And then you also have this other framework in your book, the super framework. And I don't want to give away the entire book, but can you kind of talk about that? Because I think the S was the most interesting to me in that how you create that connection. Can you kind of walk through the super framework?
Yeah, absolutely. And we can walk through the ladder too if you want to walk.
Yeah, let's start with the ladder.
We'll start there. So Probably the biggest aha moment I had in talking to business owners across the board, all sizes of companies, all different types of product businesses, service business, experience businesses. Lots and lots of times people were coming to me saying, we have an awareness problem. Not enough people know how great we are. If only we had a bigger ad budget. If only we had somebody that was, understood the algorithms better. If only we could buy into more sponsorships. And when I really dug in, it was almost never an awareness problem. Plenty of people know. They just didn't care. They weren't buying. They were aware, but they weren't buying. Or they had bought once, but they weren't coming back. It was really an apathy problem. People just didn't care. They didn't care enough to pull the trigger, or they didn't care enough after they experienced once to come back and do it again. So I had all of these people that were trying to solve an apathy problem by treating it like an awareness problem. And that's never going to work. So that's really when I talk about this ladder to super fandom, I talk about this idea of, when most people think about how we're going to take somebody up a ladder, you think about it in a very one directional way, right? Like we're only going up. Fans are just going up the ladder. Maybe you envision it like leaned up against a house or another surface, and they're walking from one rung to another. At least that's how I was always taught to think about it. When I was in business school, that's the way we talk about it, right? Like we take them from one step to the next step, and then we take them from the next step to the next step. So there are two problems with that analogy. Number one is the ladder isn't leaned up against a wall where people are only going up in one direction. It's more like those ladders at the carnival where it's attached at the top and the bottom and it's shaking and people are constantly falling off the ladder, or they're taking a step back to try to go forward. So that's kind of like the first problem is people think about like, oh, I've got to get people from one step to the other step. And they don't really worry about people falling off along the way. It's just like, how do I take them from step 3 to step 4? When we all know as customers, that's not how it works. We go forwards, we go back. The other big problem is thinking that once you've got somebody on the ladder, you don't have to worry about making them care about you anymore. Like
I've gotten them to the top and now I can stop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I talk about in the book all of the rungs of the ladder, and we don't have to go through them here, but basically the biggest takeaway is that apathy is not just like that first step to get them on the ladder. Apathy is everything all around you all the time. So people are constantly being presented with better options, better ideas. And so like, just to give you a real life example, my husband and I have had the same phone. Well, I've had the same phone carrier for 19 years. Like since I moved to New York after college, got my first cell phone, I've always had AT&T. When my husband and I got married, I added him to my account. We were grandfathered into an account that like does not exist anymore. So 3 or 4 months ago,
I'm laughing to myself because I've recently made the switch off AT&T too.
Well, I'm gonna have to get your advice, because 3 or 4 months ago, my mother-in-law, who lives like 10 minutes from us, and she's never had like a real phone carrier. She has one of those where I don't even know what the company is called, but she like buys minutes on QVC. Like every however often she buys minutes and she buys data and she buys texts. And then when they're gone, she gets a new phone from QVC. Like it's always a new phone. So anyway, and then when she asks us how to like tech support, we're like, this isn't a phone. Like we don't know how to, So finally, a few months ago, I was like, look, you have to get an iPhone, and you have to get an iPhone on like a real carrier, because I can't tech support this like product that I don't understand what it is. So we added her to our phone plan, and I was very careful. I was like, look, I know that we're grandfathered into a plan that doesn't exist anymore. I do not want anything to mess with what my husband and I have. We'll add my mother-in-law if we can do it for a reasonable price every month so that she's on our account, but that it doesn't mess anything up. They assured me, even put in writing, that nothing was going to change. Of course, they messed it up. Of course, everything's changed. So when I called to try to unwind every, misstep that an agent had made in doing this, and they said, well, we're sorry, this is the best we can do. My instinct was at first say like, I've been your I've been a customer since January of 2006. Like, I would imagine you would want to try to find a way to keep me as a customer. They don't. They
No.
don't care at all. So now we're switching to Verizon, and it's gonna end up costing about the same. But it's the principle of the fact that AT&T didn't care enough after 19 years to, I'm not even asking for preferential treatment. I'm just saying, look, you sent me this email saying, here's what it's going to be. Like, that's all I'm asking for. All I want is the plan that I've had for years with the addendum of my mother-in-law, which you told me in writing was possible and would not affect. So can you not honor the thing that you said in writing that you would do? And of course they're like, oh, but somebody on our team messed it up. And now that it's been more than 30 days, we don't have the authority to fix it, which obviously is a lie. So apathy
Yep.
and anger can at any point make somebody say, I don't want to be your customer anymore. And oftentimes it's not about the initial thing. It's about the reaction to the initial thing. Like, they made a mistake. Fine. If they would fix that mistake, I'd be a customer for another 19 years. But the fact that they're treating me like I did something wrong and then making it difficult, I'm like, you know what? You're never going to get another dollar from me for as long as I live. Even if I have to go pay more money to your competitor for the exact same thing, I will gladly do that because I don't want you to get my money anymore.
I had the exact same experience with the same carrier. I'd been with AT&T. I'm a little older than you. I've been with AT&T for 22 years. And then I ended up marrying a Canadian. I'd spent a lot of time in Canada. Their international plan was bilking me. I've never spent so much money in my life. And so I looked at Verizon's plan. They had something that was much more affordable. I said, can you at least, look, I've been a customer 22 years. Can you at least try to match something along? No, they couldn't. And I think the problem is everybody thinks Creating Superfans sits in the marketing department, but it sits in the sales department, sits in the customer service department. And the hardest part is when that customer service department might be overseas. And those people already feel detached from what's really going on, or they don't understand, if you're an American and maybe you're more privileged, these privileged American, you still deserve that same great experience. You deserve to give that same great experience to that person. And it's very, very hard, especially in this day and age, to train people to care and have ownership. And, how do you do that? I know in your book, you talk about the Ritz-Carlton and how somebody lost their stuffed doll. I've heard this over and over again. I was listening to, and you can tell that story, but I was listening to somebody talking about their experience working at a Vegas hotel. It was Mandarin Oriental or something like that. It was something similar to the Ritz-Carlton. And the same thing where those employees were given the time to really make a difference. And I feel it's the United States and it's our mindset of go, go, go. If it doesn't generate a profit, move on. And I'm doing too much talking as the interviewer, but how can you as a company instill this all the way down the organization?
So it's a great question. The first part is making sure that everyone on your team understands that they are the acting chief of experience. And what I mean by that is that at any given moment, when you are representing the company, you are the company to that employee. It doesn't matter if you're somebody who is on your third day at the call center or if you're the CEO, you are the one acting as the company in that instance. So making sure that everybody on your team knows that and that they understand how to succeed in that role. So what does your company stand for? What is your company all about? Something that a lot of people mistakenly conflate is this idea that something has to be expensive to feel luxurious, when in reality, what most people are looking for is that humanity, is that empathy, that saying, you know what, because I care about you, I will absolutely try to match this international plan to make things a little bit easier on you and your wife. This isn't something that we have on the rate card, but because you've been our customer for 22 years and we would hate to lose you, let me see what I can do. That's what people are looking for, not let me pay, a discounted price for an exorbitantly expensive experience. It's not. It's about how do I make you feel like you matter to me? How do I make every customer feel like we want them to continue to do business with us? Because ultimately, super fandom is a two-way street. If you want your customers to care about your business, you've got to show them that you care about them as individuals, that you want them to continue to be a part of this little ecosystem, this little world that you're building.
100%. I mean, what we have core pillars at Handwritten, and one of ours is the customer always comes first. And we try to instill that. We try to tell, whether you're working a robot or working customer service or marketing, anything else, you have to always think of it from the customer perspective. And I love that your book talks so much about that. Before, because I alluded to it, can you talk a little bit to the Ritz-Carlton example?
Yeah, so this is actually not an example from my book. So this you may have heard it elsewhere, but I know exactly what you're talking about. It's a very well-known story. A kid left their stuffed animal behind at the Ritz-Carlton, and of course was devastated. And instead of just sending that stuffed animal back, an employee at the Ritz-Carlton took the stuffed animal all around the resort and took all of these fun pictures of the animal, like at the pool and at the spa and having lunch, and all of these like adorable post pictures. Had those photos printed out into an album, called it, Stuffy's Big Day or whatever the stuffed animal's name was, and returned the animal with this photo album and a note from the staff saying how much fun they had, doing the vacation with Stuffy, so that when the kid got the stuffed animal back, they were like, oh my gosh, they just wanted to stay an extra day and have all this fun. So of course, super heartwarming story. The kid loved it. The family loved it. It went super viral. I think this happened like 15 years, 20 years ago. It's been a long time. And people still tell this story to this day because it has emotional resonance. It's something that, makes you be like, oh, this is so cute. But also it's an example of something that took a little bit of time, but not much, cost a tiny bit of money, but not much, but had an ROI that was like probably 10,000 fold
100%.
of the people that have been telling that story and sharing that story for like over a decade now, because of how it made them feel. And everybody wants to think that that's how we would be treated in that scenario. A few weeks ago, we were, what was when the eclipse happened? So what was that, like 6 weeks ago? We stayed at a hotel and I realized that I'd left my glasses there. Like the whole family was there. It was chaotic that morning with the kids. And I realized I'd left my glasses there and they were new and they were like the ones that turn into sunglasses when you go outside. And I was like, oh, I don't want to have to pay to replace them because they were a few $100s. Let me call the hotel. And it was like 9:30 in the morning. Like we could have turned around and gone back, but we were on our way to where we were going to go see the eclipse. And they were like, oh, sorry. Like we had the maid look in the room and she didn't see them. And I was like, well, I know exactly where they are. Like I remember like setting them down and just got interrupted with my kid. And my husband probably called the hotel like 3 times after that and was like, okay, just in case they turn up. Okay, just in case you have them. And every time they were like, nope, sorry, no glasses, which was a bummer. And guess what? The next time we go back there, I probably am not going to stay at that hotel, because how easy would it have been for that person at the front desk to, like, we were even on the first floor, like for the person at the front desk to be like, let me walk over and look exactly on the nightstand where you are positive that your glasses are and get them. And, I would have gladly paid for them to send them to me. So yeah, it's those little touch points, those little levels of service that make you say, this company truly cares. They're willing to take a minute or 2 minutes out of their day to do something that's going to greatly impact my life in some way.
And sorry, I don't know how it's been a while since I've completely pounded through the entire book.
No, it's totally fine. I'll one for it. It's a great story.
Another one for me that 20 some odd years ago, I would say, maybe 21 years ago, I was staying at the Fairmont. And I will never, it is such a little thing, but it made such a big difference. And it talks again about this training all the way down the organization. I was in the Fairmont, New York, and I'm walking down the hallway, and there was a janitor walking through the hallway. And he saw me walking towards the elevator, and he was walking past the elevator. As he walks by, he just taps the elevator button, and he just keeps going. And it's like the 24 years later or whatever it is, I'm still remembering that. It is such a small gesture, but it just shows that the entire organization is all about hospitality and gratitude and everything else. It blew me away. Even when I was kind of young back then, I was in my, I was like, oh my God, they actually take the time for those little things and they make such a difference. So
Well, and for everyone listening, one of the things that I talk about in this book is the idea that your customers are never going to be treated better by your employees than your employees are treated by you. So you really have to model what you want to have happen. And, speaking of the, like to the Ritz level, right? A lot of times people say, oh, I want my employees to give 5-star service, but they're hiring people who've never experienced anything
Right.
like 5-star service. They've never eaten at a really fancy restaurant. They've never stayed at a really fancy hotel. They've never flown first class. They've never gone on a really fancy vacation. So oftentimes it's not just telling, it's showing, it's saying, here's what I mean. Here's an example of what it means. And either sending your people to experience some of those things or giving them very concrete examples, because it's not that people don't want to do it. It's just that they literally don't know because they haven't experienced it themselves. And a friend of mine named Ryan Minton, who would probably be a really great person to invite onto the series, he wrote a book called Thanks for Coming In Today. And he has worked in the hotel and hospitality industry for a really long time. And one of the stories that he tells in his book that I really love is every time he gets a new hotel that he's going to go make over, like one that's been, gotten bad marks for service and repeat and, all the things, he often is asked to do like hotel makeovers. And one of the first things he always does when he comes in is ask the team what they need, because he said a lot of times it's like you go to a hotel and the maid is like, if only I could get a new mop. Like, it's so much harder because I'm working with this mop that's terrible. And you can go get like a $12 mop from Target that to them cuts their job time in half, right? So that's like the first thing, is finding out what your team truly needs to perform their job at the level that they know that they have the ability to do their job if they were supported in the right way. So making sure that you're always asking those types of questions to your team, just as simple as, what do you need? And is there anything that I could provide that could help you do an even better job of providing excellent service to our customers? And then the second thing that he always does when he takes over a hotel is he makes over the break room. Because he said oftentimes at hotels, all of the money goes into renovating the lobby or updating the guest rooms or launching a new restaurant or spa. And the employees have this like dingy, dirty, ugly space to go for their break. And just to have the mindset of like, I'm in this ugly place. Now I've got to go back out for my job where I'm in this like beautiful place and I've got to like put on this, fake smile. So he said, always make the area that your employees have access to as beautiful or more beautiful as what your customers see, because doing that is telling them you're important, you matter, you are a very, big part of this bigger picture. So 2 things that I would say there is,
I love it.
What they need, and make sure you're taking care of them, because they will treat your customers the way you treat them.
I love it. I mean, that's kind of what I was, not as succinctly or beautifully, but the employees overseas, I mean, they don't have that experience and they can't connect with it, but creating that beautiful break room, I absolutely love that. I want to talk about the SUPER, but before we do, I want to get a little controversial and talk about a brand that I 100%, because I just found it in here before the show again, talk about a brand that everybody loves and you take issue with, which is Costco. Can you talk a little about a bad experience or your experience you had with Costco?
Absolutely. And I will tell you, David, I have gotten so many emails. I've probably gotten 25 emails from strangers who read the book that were like, let me change your mind about Costco. Let me tell you this about Costco, to the extent that I'm like, you know what? I'm willing to give Costco another go, just because so many people have reached out of the blue with no skin in the game to say, let me tell you why you need to care about Costco. So here's the story. 7 years ago, my husband and I moved from New York to Franklin, Tennessee, where we live now, just south of Nashville. And we knew we were going to join one of the big box clubs because we had this, brand new house that was crying out for bulk size toilet paper and paper towels. And I had never been to a Costco before. I still to this day have never shopped at a Costco. So this is 7 years ago. I never shopped at a Costco. And the other option was Sam's Club right across the street. And I grew up in Oklahoma and Arkansas. So I've been to lots of Sam's Club. So I was like, well, let's go check out the Costco. And then we'll decide if we're going to get a card for both of them or just one of them. So we drive up to the Costco. There's the, bouncer at the door who says, where's your Costco card? And I said, oh, we actually want to join. Like, we want to become members. So we want to like look around and become members. And he said to me, we don't allow window shopping. You're going to need to go get your card first before you walk through the store. And I was like, I mean, we've never been in a Costco. We can't just walk around for 30 seconds. And he's like, no. And so we were like, okay. So we go in this line, a very long line at customer service, and finally get to the front like 20 minutes later and say, you know, hey, we want to buy a Costco card. And she says, well, you know, we've got the regular card and then we've got whatever the deluxe card is that costs double. And I was like, well, I'm going to just start with the regular card because I've never been to a Costco before. I want to just like look around. And thing after thing after thing of like an 11 question tree of like, well, you know, are you going to get new tires this year? Because if you're getting new tires, you should get this extra card. Or are you going to go on vacation? Because, you know, we have these benefits for Disney. And every time I was like, no, just sell me the $50 card so I can go get like paper towels and stuff. Like, I just want to walk around the store. So it's like such a frustrating experience. After the end of these like 12 questions, I go to pay. And she says, oh, we only accept Visa cards. And I'm like, all right, let me see if I have a Visa. Like, hopefully my debit card is a Visa because my credit cards were not, right? Neither of my credit cards were a Visa. And I'm like, well, that would have been like something great to know about before, you know, all of this. So I'm going like looking through my wallet for my debit card, which I never used for anything, right? And luckily it's a Visa. And I go to hand it to her and she says, well, you know, you qualify for our Costco Visa card. So how about you just apply for our Visa Costco card today with the deluxe membership, and then you'll never have to worry about not having a Visa card. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm actually done. I've changed my mind. I don't want a membership. And she's like, but you're like, we've come this far. And I was like, exactly. I've been here almost half an hour. I still haven't been able to shop in your store. I am done. I'm over it. This is like not the kind of place where I want to shop because you have not made me feel welcome. And she was like, all right, cool. So we walked out of the store, went across the street, got our Sam's card, which by the way, they were like, if you know, here's our regular one. And for the deluxe one, you get, and then they told me what the benefits were in like 30 seconds. And I was like, oh, cool. I get extra shopping hours. I get free delivery. You'll bring it to my car, like whatever the things were that were like very tangible, not like, you know, Disney vacation tires on your car, whatever it was. And so here we are 7 years later. I've spent, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars, whatever it is at Sam's, like huge amounts of money every month because we have 2 kids and, you know, all the things that we go through in bulk. And all of that money could have gone to Costco, but they made me feel unwelcome. First, the person at the door, and then the person at customer service. And if anybody had the, you know, emotional intelligence to be like, oh, this is your first time, welcome. We're so glad you're here. Like, you're going to love being a Costco member, or had been able to make it a little bit easier in any way, we may not even have a Sam's card because we went to Costco first. Like, that was our first choice. So the moral of the story is, if you make it difficult for your customers to do business with you, and there is an easy alternative for them to not to have to do business with you, a lot of them are going to go do business with that other competitor. And most of them are not going to take the time to tell you why they're leaving. They're not going to take the time to say, had you done this, I would have stayed. It's, you know, depending on the research that you look at, it's usually anywhere from like 85 to 95% of customers that leave without saying why, because they don't care. Like, why should they go out of their way to spend their time and energy to give you feedback to make your business better when they're leaving your business? So the overwhelming majority of people just leave. Occasionally, you'll hear from the people who are really angry or who want to make a fuss or are trying to get some sort of restitution for what happened to them. But the majority of time, people are just like, you suck. I'm going somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. Like, it's funny. You say that about feedback. We try to get feedback from people. And a lot of the times my team is like, let's offer them a $25 handwritten card, you know, $25 in handwritten credit for their feedback. I said, well, that's great if they like our service. And if you want all 5-star reviews, do that. Because if I don't like handwritten, why would I want $25 more of handwritten? You know what I mean? Why am I going to take the time? So we kind of use that to game. Okay, in this situation, we want good reviews. In this situation, we want honest reviews. We'll figure out something else to do that. But I totally agree there. I do want to talk about the SUPER because I think it's so important. And then we will open it for questions and talk a little bit about handwritten notes, because I do want to talk about that too, but that's not why we're here. So let's talk about SUPER and that process.
Absolutely. So I wanted to create a framework that was simple for people to remember, simple for them to teach their teams, and most importantly, simple for them to use. So I tried to distill all of the most important parts of how to win in an experience economy, how to turn your customers into super fans into one framework. So that framework, as you mentioned, is the word super. I call it the super model. It's an acronym. Every single letter points to one thing that if you do this, you will be exponentially better off than if you don't do it. And they're all like nesting dolls. Each one builds on the next one, or the previous one. So S stands for start with your story. And when I say start with your story, it's not lead with your story. It's what is your story? Why do you matter? Why does what you're doing impact the world, and more specifically your customers, in a very tangible way? Because if you're not able to explain to your customers why their lives will be better with you in it, then they're probably not going to figure it out. And if they don't connect to your story, they are that much more likely to go to a competitor when a competitor comes around, because customers buy what you are, super fans buy why you do it. Like
Mhm.
that, like what it is that makes you do the things that you do. So that's the first. Start with your story. Up next is you. You stands for understand your customer story. I always say that super fans are created at the intersection of your story and every customer story. So how do you bring those two together? How do you make your thing relevant to their life? So if you have robots that handwrite cards, understanding that for your customers, it's about the time that they're saving. It's about the ability to take something and make it work at scale that just physically wouldn't be possible without scale. It's about saying, we know you care about the people you're sending cards to. Here's how we maintain the integrity and the realness that, like, grandma would still be happy to get this from you, right? Like all of the things that you're talking to that they truly need. So it's not just the authority that you have, but the empathy that you have to showcase, I understand what you need, and this is how I'm going to help with a transformation that's important to you in your life. So that's the you. P is personalize. I like to say that super fans are created at the intersection of your story and every customer story. I know I've already said that a few times, but it's so important to remember. And the way you connect your story and your customers is with that personalization. It might be high tech or it might be high touch, but it's something to signal to that customer, you matter. You as an individual, as a person, matter. We're grateful that you're here and we want you to continue to stay here. So that's the P. I'm going through these very quickly. Obviously,
Yeah.
if you want to hear more about them, check out the book, and I've written about all of them extensively. E is probably my favorite. E stands for exceed expectations. And it's where in my book, I talk about this idea of intentional experience design. So bringing intentionality to every single step of your customer's journey, before, during, and after the actual act of working with you. So how are you stretching that experience beyond what would traditionally be where it starts and where it kind of ends, or where it goes dormant until next time? And then finally, R stands for repeat. That's where I talk about all of the systemization and automation that you can use, how you can use tools like AI to scale things that would not have been possible before. I love this quote by Elizabeth Arden. She says, repetition makes reputation and reputation makes customers. And it's so true. So what are the things that we can repeat, either by building the systems, by using automation and technology, or just by making it as simple to do the right thing as it is to do the easy thing? Like, how can we game the system in our favor to make sure that we're going to repeat these things that we know are important, so that every single customer has that super level of service?
Yeah. So because of reading your book, we started doing these swag kits for customers for clients that spend a certain amount of money. And the note that we include, because we're a handwriting company, we include a handwritten note. That handwritten note talks about why, for the S, this all is, I mean, I literally sat down with your book and I looked at it and was trying to figure out, okay, I really like this connecting our story or my story to the client. So we talk about how in that note, it says, I used to send 1 million texts a day for big brands. And then I realized it was just becoming noise. That's why I started this. Thank you for joining us on this. And we are excited to help you with your scaling of customer experience. So that specific note came straight out of the Brittany Hodak playbook. And then with that, we did include a notebook, a really nice leatherette handwritten notebook for actual notes, but it does say handwritten on it. And I want to talk about that too, because in rereading your book for this discussion, I realized that it had the branding on it. And you said anything with a branding is what? It's an ad, right?
I said it's an ad, not a gift, which not to say swag doesn't have its place. And you can absolutely give swag to your customers. But oftentimes we conflate the idea of swag with the idea of gifts. And David, I'm guessing that you never in your personal life have bought a friend a shirt or a pair of sunglasses or a pair of shoes or, anything, AirPods, whatever, and like written your name on it, right? You never thought, I'm going to write David across this so they remember these sunglasses came from me. We would never do that in real life. But in business, we think, oh, let's put our logo on it so they remember it's from us. When you don't put your logo on something, not only are people more likely to use it, but if it has value, they will remember it's from you. Now, that's not to say there are not circumstances where you can put your logo on it. If you are sending a leatherette notebook that's so nice that you think most of your customers are going to use it anyway, and they're going to use it in a scenario where other people in a room are going to maybe see it and say like, oh, what's handwritten? So what you're really trying to get is that like pass along somebody seeing your logo. Totally fine. But just don't confuse that as a gift, because it is very much giving somebody an ad and saying, will you please go promote my company on my behalf? It's
You're totally right. Guilty as charged.
They both have their places, but
they are very nice notebooks, but I agree. There is that, and we talk about this. We want our swag to be really good so that it is used, so that it is passed around. And it's not like just some cheapo notebook. I mean, we get these made by a stationery company in China, not a promotions company here. But to your point, it is, we do want that subtle message of handwritten on there. The best gift we give away is a robot pen. Our old robots are, they didn't push down on paper. They'd have to use gravity to do that. And to assist the gravity, the pen was heavy. It was out of brass. And there was no branding on that pen. But what there was, and when we'd give these away, they're beautiful brass pens that we'd have custom made. And when we no longer need them, but we still kind of use them out of for historical purposes. But when we give it away, we would give it away like we'd use it on the robot. And what that meant was the pen was a regular brass pen, but there was a little flat, like a little drill hole on the pen, where after you take the pen off to replace the ink, you put it back on, you have to screw it in place to hold it on the robot. When we'd give out the pens, we'd make sure they had the flat on them, because that didn't say handwritten anywhere, but that flat told a story. And it set that pen apart from every other pen they'd have. And we like to do it. It's just the problem is the pens are darn expensive, with custom made brass pens. So we still do give it away to our very, very best customers. We actually probably need to get more made, but it was all about telling that story of just a little drill hole, why that drill hole's there. And we gave it away for Christmas one year to our very best customers, and people raved about it. So we are guilty as charged. I mean, that notebook absolutely says embossed, not in a different color, but it does say handwritten on that. So
maybe in the future, instead of putting that handwritten logo on the front, maybe you put it on the back, and maybe on the front you have embossed or even written with one of your pens the name of the person who's getting the package. So now they've got this personalized notebook that has their name on the front of it.
Yep, you're totally right. So I want to open this up for. Well, actually, I want to talk about your handwritten note to the coach of again. I'm very curious if he's going to stand by his word on the tuition, but can you tell everybody a little bit about that to get into handwritten notes?
Sure. So when my husband and I first got pregnant with our oldest son, the question that I kept getting from friends, and this is 7 years ago. So the question that I kept getting was, what are you going to do for your gender reveal? And I was like, nothing. Like, what? An absolute example of how we expect way too much from women and moms. Like, it's not enough. I'm making a person. Now I have to throw a party to let people know if it's a boy or a girl. Like, unsubscribe. I wanted no part of any of it. I had this terrible attitude about this whole gender reveal thing. And my husband said, well, what if we got a celebrity to do our gender reveal? And I was like, what if we just open the envelope with the sonogram in it? Like, how about that? That seems like so much easier. And my husband said, what if we wrote a note to Jim Harbaugh, who at the time was the coach of the Michigan Wolverines? My husband, huge University of Michigan fan, grew up near Ann Arbor, went to college in Ann Arbor, just absolutely idolized Jim when he was a kid because Jim Harbaugh was the first quarterback that my husband ever remembers playing at Michigan. So I was thinking, great, now I'm going to have a heartbroken husband when his hero doesn't write back to him. But we wrote this note saying, hey, we've really enjoyed watching you at all these Michigan games. Like, we went to the first one that Jim coached in Utah and lots of other games, even though we were living in New York and then in Tennessee. So wrote this note and had like when college kids are committed to play to a college, or when high school kids commit to a college, they sign what's called the letter of intent. So we wrote a letter of intent from the baby and put the little envelope with the sealed picture. And the envelope was like, hopefully if I'm a boy, like maybe I can play on your team one day. If I'm a girl, I don't know. I can't remember all the stuff that we wrote, but it was like, I can't wait to be a Michigan man or woman. Can you let my mom and dad know? And did not expect to hear anything back. Just put it in the mail to the, athletic department with no idea where to really send it. We got 2 weeks later a handwritten note from Coach Harbaugh letting us know that we were having a little boy and offering him a scholarship to play on his team in 2035, which was, of course, amazing. And it's funny, my best friend is Pardon?
Is it framed now?
It is. It is absolutely framed. It's hanging in my son's room. And my best friend is a lawyer. So as soon as we got it, I texted her and I was like, is this going to hold up? And she was like, well, at the least he's going to have a really compelling like entrance exam.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, like his essay to get in is going to be really great. And now, of course, Coach Harbaugh has gone to the NFL after winning the national championship earlier this year. So hopefully, he did write on behalf of the University of Michigan. So, like I said, I think minimally we'll have a great argument when my son is applying for school in 11 years or so.
Well, yeah, I think and when you wrote Coach Harbaugh, was it a handwritten note or was it a typed letter? Or
it was both. We typed the letter of intent because it was designed to look like, we actually went online to see what letters of intent look like. And then our note was handwritten.
Yeah, I think, of course I got to throw a little handwritten in here. I got into this because I was part of the problem with all that text stuff and electronic communication. But I think it's in some ways, a great cheat to create a quick experience with somebody or a quick connection with somebody. The example I always give on podcasts, I might have given it on yours, is the story of a piano tuner. And this, a piano tuner, Pennsylvania, goes into your house once a year to tune your piano. Your piano only needs to be tuned once a year. And so after he goes to your house, he writes a handwritten note. I think he might have it automated. He might put in some personal information. He uses our service to do that. That note goes out a year later when he goes back to your house to retune your piano. That note is often standing up on the piano. So for me, yes, from a marketing perspective, you can't buy that advertising space. I cannot buy somebody's top of the piano. I could never expect somebody to print out an email or a text message and glue it or stick it to the piano. But a handwritten note has that special place. So there's that marketing perspective. But then the other side of it is just the connection. I've been on your podcast, I've had the good fortune of being on a lot of podcasts. And the question I often get is, what's the ROI for sending a thank you note? And I would love to hear your answer on that, because I'll give mine after that and we can compare notes. But what do you think? What's the ROI whether using handwritten or just sitting down to send a handwritten note. How does that look for you?
Well, I think it was Albert Einstein who said, not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts.
Love it. I'm feeling that.
Absolutely. Credit to Albie on that.
He must have been a smart guy or something.
A brilliant guy, that Einstein,
Yeah.
right? I think he had a couple things figured out. Probably my favorite method for figuring out the ROI of happy customers is EGR, or earned growth rate. So that's looking at what percentage of your business is coming from repeat and referred clients. There is an advocacy marketing company called Mention Me that tracks the ROI of referrals and happy customers, and really fascinating statistics. They have a big report they put out every year with all of their data. But the thing that I think is most telling is this. So, and this is across lots of different industries, B2B, B2C, everything. A customer who comes to you via referral is 5 times more likely to refer another customer. So think about that. When you look at the life cycle of a customer, if you can make a customer love you and tell someone else, that second degree customer, that referred customer, is 5 times more likely to create more customers than just a customer who comes to you via a social ad or a Google search, or because they drove by, or, you know, whatever. So I think when you look at the ROI, it's not just what does the cell in the spreadsheet say? It's knowing that you're playing the long game. And it's knowing that if you get that space in somebody's house that you can never buy, right? Like, not only could you not afford it if it was available to buy because of how expensive it would be, but it is not available to buy. When you occupy that, and when somebody makes a purchase because you've earned the trust of someone they trust, that's going to continue to proliferate for several degrees. Right? Like a customer who tells a customer who tells a customer who tells a customer who tells a customer. That is such a better use of resources than trying to win the SEO game, trying to win the let me get an ad that's going to work game, because those customers are likely not going to have the same lifetime value, the same cart value, and the same referral value as somebody who came to you via a happy customer. And that is why the ROI of things like handwritten notes is not just immeasurable, as in like it's hard to pinpoint and measure, but like off the charts.
Love it. You know, I take the more argumentative approach, and I say, if you're asking that question, what's the matter with society? You know, to ask, you know, what I think that society as a whole, in this day and age of abundance, you know, where there's a million handwriting companies, there's a million speakers of a million types, there's a million SaaS plays, or whatever you are, there's a million of you. And if there aren't a million of you, somebody can go on Alibaba or Upwork and either create it or buy it. You know, they can find that. So the fact that somebody took the time to choose you out of the infinite possibilities of things like you, I just think it's worth saying thank you. And we shouldn't, to your point on Albert Einstein, I mean, people spend money on a lot stupider things than saying thank you, you know, on that mug or that notebook with the handwritten logo on it. You know, what's more important? I think whether it's picking up the phone and calling, sending a thoughtful email, which is tough to do because everybody thinks everything can be automated now, and an email goes under such a stringent lens where it's really hard to get through that. And people are also like, well, if you're sending an email, why aren't, you know, whoop-de-doozle. But you know, going out of your way to say thank you in whatever way it is, I just think, you know, why try to, it's $5, you know, whether you go to the store, pick up a card, go, you know, you're talking about a $5 gift for whatever you do. I think that will pay for itself in spades. And the fact that people are even asking that question says a lot about America. I just have this real issue. I get that question 5 times a week now on all these podcasts or whatever. And it just, it's starting to hit me at the core. And I'm wondering, what is the matter with society? They don't have to use our service. They could do whatever they want, but saying thank you should not be, everything shouldn't be a tit for tat.
Absolutely. And my husband's birthday was a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking that night, and he said, I didn't get a single call on my birthday today. And I was like, really? And he goes, yeah, my mom sent me a text message. And he was like, it's crazy. Like, I remember, when you're a kid, like everybody calls you. And he's like, I got lots of texts. I got lots of Facebook messages. I got some emails, but not a single person called. And he did get a few cards. And obviously, like, my sons and I did a bunch of fun stuff for him at home. But sometimes it's just that little thing that makes all the difference, that makes someone take notice. And it doesn't just have to be thank you cards. It can be occasional cards like, happy first day of summer, happy birthday, happy half birthday. There are so many examples. One of the stories, I don't think I actually put this story in my book. I was going to, and I think it was one of the things that kind of like came out of the cutting room floor. I love sending handwritten notes. It's always been a part of my process. Years ago when I was living in New York, I had met with somebody, and this guy, like David, when I tell you he did not want to be there, he was like not even trying to hide it. It was like a friend of a friend who had finally agreed to meet me. He was this big artist manager. I was trying to get this huge project over the finish line. And I mean, it was so bad that like 10 minutes into the meeting, I was like, if you have like somewhere to be, like, we don't have to do this. Like, it was so awkward. And he's like, yeah, cool. Thanks. Like, nice to meet you, whatever. Right. I remember when I was writing out a note on Friday, because at the end of the week, I would always like look at all the meetings that I did that week and send out my thank you notes. And he had mentioned that his birthday was coming up. So instead of writing it in, I'm sorry,
This is in the book.
Oh, is it in the book? Okay. I thought
it's familiar. Yeah.
I wrote almost 120,000 words for the 60,000 word book. So like a lot of it came out. So maybe it is in the book. I didn't think it was. I have no idea. But anyway, so this guy, instead of writing a thank you note, I wrote a thank you message in a birthday card. And I remember doing it because I remember thinking, I can't believe I'm wasting a card and postage. Like, I was getting low on my stack of birthday cards, and I was like, this is such a waste. This guy's like literally never going to talk to me ever again. Like, he had such a bad attitude about even being there with me for the like 10 minutes that we were at Starbucks. So I put it in the mail, forget about it. Like a week later, my phone rings. Hey, Brittany, it's Jeremy. And in my head, I'm like, Jeremy who? Like, who's calling me? Who's this person? And he said, I just wanted to thank you for the note that you sent. And I was like, yeah, like, how was your birthday? Did you guys go see Hamilton or whatever he said they were going to do? And he said, no, you don't understand. My grandma passed away a couple of months ago, and I was so incredibly close to her. She raised me, and there were years of my life that the only person who sent me a birthday card, the only person who told me happy birthday was my grandma. And all I could think about, like dreading my birthday, was the fact that my grandma isn't here. And this is my first birthday without my grandma, and how tough that was going to be. I didn't even check my mail for the days around my birthday because, I was dreading it so much. And then a couple days later, finally checked my mail because I didn't want the building to say like, your box is full. And there was a birthday card from you. And I feel like my grandma put you in my life to send that birthday card. It felt like my grandma looking down saying, you're going to be okay. And that's the power of sending a handwritten note.
And if I didn't hear that read that in this book, I read it, or I saw it in one of your LinkedIn videos, or maybe when we spoke, but I have heard that story. So,
or maybe it's in the book. Like I said, I should know the answer, but I don't.
That's awesome. I want to be conscious of everybody's time, yours in particular. What I'd like to do now is open it up to Amber, who's been recording questions. So Amber, are there any questions for Brittany?
Yes. We had a question come in from Max asking, what guidance or perspective do you have relating to leveraging cards in prospecting efforts and connecting with net new customers?
That's a great question, Max. Thanks for asking. The first thing I would say is ask yourself, what are the moments where you would like to meet those new customers? Is it after they've engaged with your brand in some way because they've raised their hands, they're somewhere in your pipeline prospect? And then I would ask yourself, what can you do that's going to really make them feel something, whether that's they're going to laugh, they're going to have an emotional connection. Like, what is it that you can do? Because you don't want it to solely be about, hey, will you try my company for the first time? You don't want it to just be here's a discount or here's a special offer. So what is it that you know about them, their needs, and why you're a great fit? And how can you take whatever your brand personality is? Maybe your brand communicates in a way that's like really, dry sense of humor. Maybe it's really over the top silly sense of humor. Whatever it is, how can you meet at those points of intersection? My favorite thing to do when I'm trying to figure out what the copy is that I'm going to write, I'll start with ChatGPT. I'll say, hey, I'm trying to figure out 5 points of contact where I reach X and then describe the customer, adding value to them by, and then why, what that thing is that you want to do. And then have ChatGPT give you some prompts, some things that you can offer, some things that you can do to add value in them that isn't just basically a card that's like, hey, I know you exist and I would like your money, please and thanks.
I love that. I love using the tools and resources that are out there to build upon what you want to accomplish rather than just letting ChatGPT or something else do it for you. That's huge. I love that. Thank you for making that point. It kind of leads into Max's second question, where he's asking a little bit more anecdotally. Have you found that decision makers in the B2C space and in enterprises are receptive to personalized notes?
Absolutely. And I think regardless of the avatar of the customer that you're trying to reach, remember that these are people. People are people. I don't care if somebody is a CEO or an assistant. They're human. They have the same human emotions. I read a story. I can't remember where I read this the other day, and I'd never heard this before, but this was from like decades ago. British Airways was trying to get more American customers on executive flights from New York to London. And they realized that it was the assistants that were booking the flights. So they got a list of like the top 500 CEOs or something and all of their assistants. And every single Monday morning for like months, they sent a single rose and a note to each of the assistants. And it was usually like a funny, silly poem about like the next time you're booking your boss's flight, whatever, look us up. But it was always a different poem and it was a single rose, and they did it every single Monday morning to the assistants of all of the CEOs from the top however many companies. And I thought that was such a great story. And over the course of a year, they had like several times the amount of market share that they had for New York-based customers that were booking their business travel on British Airways.
I love that. I just think it's so often we forget to slow down and remember that humans and human emotions are like what we're really working with here. And you make that such a good point with your superstructure of, the intersection of the client and you. Like that's where we come together and we build. And I love that. Thank you for sharing that Rose story. We had Yashika, who is just really wanting to buy your book. So I will give you this time to let us know where we can find it.
Thank you, Shika. It's available everywhere books are sold. So if you are an audiobook person, there's an Audible version that I narrate. For anybody else, I love the hardcover version because it's in color and it's really, really fun. That's available everywhere books are sold, including right now on Amazon. It is like almost 50% off. I think it's $14 and change for the hardcover on Amazon right now. But thank you so much for asking. And one more thing I want to add that I thought of, because I was thinking about how it becomes apparent that people are people and everybody is the same when you hear celebrities talk about their kids and either the way their kids react to them or react to other celebrities, because like kids don't care. And that reminded me of a really great thanks and gifting strategy, which is to acknowledge people's kids, because the same $12 that you could spend on like an ugly branded something that a customer is going to just throw away, that same $12 on a Lego set for them to take home to their son or daughter that's going to make them look like a hero is gold. So when you're loving on people, don't just think about that person, think about everybody else in their life that you may have the ability to say like, oh, I saw this and thought so-and-so would like it, or, was thinking of you when I saw XYZ. Don't just think about the individual, think about their entire sphere of influence as well.
I love that. I will say really quickly, I have a realtor who actually does, like, I've worked with him for years. I've bought a couple houses with him, but he sends my son a birthday card every year. And if I ever even thought of working with another realtor, my son would be the first one to be like, "Where's David?" Like, it's
Yep.
incredible. And I love it. I want to swing the time back over to David, and I just want to say thank you so much. It was so nice to listen to you and to get to meet you this morning.
Thank you so much, Amber. And thank you, David. It was wonderful getting to talk to you guys.
Yeah, I just want to thank you. This was incredible. I just want to talk to Yashika and everybody listening here. Not only is this a wonderful book, but it is I don't know who you got to do the graphic design and the illustration, but it's got all these cool like pages with great quotes on it and stuff. And I mean, for a first book, it's absolutely insane. So well done. And we're thinking of giving it away around here as well. And Brittany, thank you so much for braving being our very first guest on this podcast. If they want, or on this webinar, if they want to learn more about you, and we will send everybody who both attended this webinar as well as those that are on the list to attend the webinar, we will send them more information on the book. But where else should they go to learn more about you?
You can find everything about me at brittanyhodak.com. I've got tons of free resources, downloadable PDFs, blog posts, and my podcast. You'll find all of that and links to the book at brittanyhodak.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brittany. You've been such a great supporter of Handwritten, and we just love you around here. So thank you so much for being on our show.
It's mutual.
All right. Bye, everyone.